The rain fell like judgment. Dante Choi stood motionless before the black lacquered casket, his Brioni suit darkening beneath the downpour. Around him, 200 men in identical black waited, soldiers, captains, underbosses, an army pretending to grieve a queen they'd barely known. But their eyes weren't on the casket. They were on him. He had not moved in 17 minutes. Water streamed down his face, following the sharp planes of his cheekbones, the rigid line of his jaw. His hands remained clasped before him, knuckles bloodless. Someone had offered an umbrella twice. The man who'd asked the second time now wore his broken nose in silence. The priest's voice droned through the cemetery, Korean syllables blurring into the storm. Dante heard none of it. His gaze stayed fixed on the gold nameplate gleaming despite the rain, Seo Yun Jong. Beloved wife. Beloved. Before we dive in, I need your help. We're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers, and every single one matters. So if you enjoy this story, please hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from. It means everything to know you're out there. The word tasted like ash. He'd kissed her once in this rain, 5 years ago, pressed her against the stone wall of his family's estate while thunder rolled overhead. She'd laughed against his mouth, told him he was insane. He'd told her he was hers. 3 months ago, he'd signed the order for her death. The priest fell silent. Custom demanded Dante speak now, offer final words for the woman whose photograph smiled from beside the casket, frozen at 28, untouched by the violence he'd carved into her last breath. His lips parted. Nothing came. Around him, the crowd shifted. Uncomfortable. Uncertain. Dante Choi did not hesitate. He did not break. He'd executed men before breakfast, orchestrated wars over dinner, built an empire on the bones of anyone foolish enough to challenge him. He was Giandi, absolute. Untouchable. And he was shattering. The first tear cut through the rain. It tracked down his face slowly, a solitary surrender. Then another. His shoulders began to shake, minute tremors that grew into something catastrophic. His breath fractured. The sound that tore from his throat wasn't a sob. It was something older, deeper. Ruination given voice. Dante Choi fell to his knees in the mud. 200 men watched their king collapse. None moved to help him. Fear, perhaps. Or respect for a grief so absolute it demanded distance. Mayanhi, he whispered to the casket, voice destroyed. I'm sorry. Jong Mal Mayanhi. The words spilled faster, a confession to the dead. Sarangi. I love you. I've always, God, Seo Yun, I didn't know how else to. His hands fisted in the mud. I couldn't let them have you. I couldn't. You have to understand. They would have made you suffer, they would have. He stopped. His head lifted. For just a moment, his gaze swept across the gathered mourners, red-rimmed eyes searching for something he couldn't name. Lingering on faces. Looking for forgiveness in the living, perhaps, since he'd never receive it from the corpse 10 feet away. His stare passed over a woman in the back row. Black veil. Black dress. Hands folded. Unremarkable. He looked away. The woman didn't move. Didn't breathe. Beneath the veil, Seo Yun Jong watched her husband mourn her with tears streaming silently down her own face. The bullet scar hidden beneath her high collar burned. Her ring finger, bare now, the platinum band sold 3 weeks ago for train fare, ached with phantom weight. She'd come to see proof he'd truly done it. Confirmation that the man she'd loved had wanted her dead. Instead, she was watching him break. And she didn't know which truth destroyed her more. Seo-yun had always known her husband kept secrets. You didn't marry a man like Dante Choi and expect transparency. His world operated in shadows, wire transfers through shell corporations, meetings in basements that smelled of blood and bleach, phone calls he took at 3 a.m. in languages she wasn't supposed to understand. She'd accepted it. Or told herself she had. What she hadn't accepted was the distance. It had crept in slowly, like frost across glass. The way he no longer met her eyes over breakfast. How his hand would start to reach for hers, then fall away as though touching her might burn. The bedroom door that began locking from his side. 3 weeks before someone put a bullet in her chest, Seo-yun had stood in the doorway of his office and asked the question that had been building for months. Do you want me to leave? Dante's pen had stilled over the contract he'd been reviewing. He didn't look up. The lamp on his desk cast half his face in shadow, turning him into something carved from marble. Beautiful and cold. Go to bed, Seo-yun. It's 7 in the evening. Then go somewhere else. The dismissal had landed like a slap. She'd stood there, waiting for him to take it back, to look at her the way he used to, like she was the only real thing in his manufactured world. He'd returned to his contract as if she'd already gone. She should have left then. Packed a bag, called her sister, disappeared into the kind of ordinary life she'd abandoned when she'd said yes to his proposal in a garden full of white roses and armed guards. Instead, she'd walked to his desk, placed her hand over the contract, and forced him to acknowledge her. What happened to us? His jaw had tightened. For a moment, just a flash, she'd seen something raw move through his eyes. Pain, maybe. Or fear. Then it was gone, shuttered behind the mask he wore for enemies. We were a mistake, he'd said quietly. I should have known better than to bring you into this. Into what? Your life? Your work? Her voice had cracked despite her effort to keep it steady. I chose this, Dante. I chose you. Then you chose wrong. He'd stood, moving around the desk, past her, toward the door. Ending the conversation through geography. But she'd caught his wrist, felt his pulse jackrabbit beneath her fingers. Look at me and say it again. He'd gone still. For 3 heartbeats, he'd stood with his back to her, a man caught between impulses. When he finally turned, his face had been emptied of everything except a terrible resolve. You were wrong to choose me. This marriage was wrong. Keeping you here is wrong. Each word had been precisely placed, surgically cruel. I'm correcting the mistake. By what? Divorce? She'd forced a laugh. Your family doesn't believe in divorce. Neither does mine. We're bound by contracts older than. Then I'll make you a widow. The words had hung between them like smoke. Seo-yun had released his wrist. Stepped back. Searched his face for the lie, for any indication this was some twisted test. She'd found nothing but ice. You don't mean that. Don't I? He'd walked out. She'd stood in his office until the cleaning staff arrived at midnight, trying to understand how the man who'd once memorized her coffee order, who'd learned to braid her hair during a beach vacation, who'd held her through nightmares about losing him, how that man had just threatened her life with the same tone he'd used to order dinner. She'd told herself it was the stress. The family politics. The war brewing with the Kozlov Bratva that had everyone on edge. She'd been wrong. The attempt had come on a Tuesday. Seo-yun had been returning from her mother's house, shopping bags full of ingredients for the kimchi jjigae Dante used to request weekly. Before he'd stopped eating meals with her. Before he'd stopped coming home at all. She'd noticed the car following her 3 blocks from the apartment. A black sedan, windows tinted, license plates smudged deliberately. Every turn she'd made, it had mirrored. Training kicked in, the self-defense courses Dante had insisted on, the situational awareness drilled into her by his head of security. She'd pulled into a public parking garage, grabbed her phone, and dialed the emergency number Dante had programmed under a single initial, D. It had rung 4 times. Then disconnected. She'd stared at the screen, confusion giving way to cold understanding. She'd tried Min-jun next, Dante's right hand, the man who'd been at their wedding. Voicemail. G1, her assigned bodyguard who'd called in sick that morning. Voicemail. The sedan had pulled up beside her car. 2 men had emerged. She'd recognized one, Young Ho, a mid-level enforcer who'd served her tea during meetings at the estate. Who'd bowed respectfully and called her Bun, ma'am. He'd looked at her through the window with something like regret. She'd run. The parking garage had become a maze of concrete and shadow. Her heels had clattered against the ground until she'd kicked them off, sprinting barefoot toward the stairwell. Behind her, footsteps. Steady. Unhurried. They'd known she had nowhere to go. The bullet had caught her as she'd reached the stairwell door. White-hot pain had exploded through her left shoulder, spinning her around. She'd hit the concrete hard enough to taste blood, vision swimming. Through the haze, she'd seen Young Ho approaching, gun raised for the finishing shot. He'd hesitated. Just for a second, a flash of humanity, of reluctance. It had been enough. The parking attendant's golf cart had rounded the corner, headlights cutting through the dim. Young Ho had sworn in Korean, grabbed his partner, and they disappeared into the shadows like ghosts. The attendant, a college student who'd probably taken the job to pay tuition, had probably saved her life by existing in the wrong place at the right time. She'd pressed her hand to the wound, felt blood pulse hot between her fingers, and understood with perfect clarity, Dante had kept his promise. He was making her a widow. Except she'd refused to die. Now, standing in the rain at her own funeral, watching her husband destroy himself with grief, Seo-yun felt the scar tissue pull tight beneath her dress. The bullet had gone through cleanly, no major arteries, no permanent damage beyond the reminder carved into her skin. She'd survived because Young Ho had hesitated. Because a college kid had been doing rounds. Because she'd clawed her way to a clinic run by a retired nurse who didn't ask questions when Seo-yun had paid in cash and jewelry. She'd survived, and she'd disappeared. For 3 months, she'd lived in cheap motels, dyed her hair, learned to move through the world as someone forgettable. She'd monitored the news for confirmation of her death, waiting for the announcement, the funeral notice, the proof that Dante had committed fully to erasing her. When she'd seen the obituary 2 days ago, something inside her had calcified into rage. She'd come to watch him perform grief. To see him stand dry-eyed and untouched before the casket, confirming everything she'd learned about who he really was. Instead, she was watching a man unmake himself. Dante still knelt in the mud, his shoulders heaving with sobs that sounded like they were tearing him apart from the inside. His second-in-command, Min-jun, finally moved forward, placed a hand on Dante's shoulder. "Hyung-nim," Min-jun said quietly. "It's time." Dante shook his head, a desperate, broken gesture. "Jogium Deo." "A little more. Just, I need." "The men are watching." That penetrated. Slowly, agonizingly, Dante pulled himself together. Rose to his feet with Min-jun's help, mud staining his knees, his hands. His face was ravaged, eyes red-rimmed and lost. He looked, Seo-yun thought distantly, like a man who'd killed the only thing he'd ever loved and couldn't understand why. The crowd began to disperse. Black cars lined up like a funeral procession themselves, engines purring to life. Dante stood alone before the casket as the cemetery emptied, rain plastering his hair to his skull. Seo-yun should have left. Melted back into the anonymity she'd built. Instead, she stayed. Watching. Waiting. Trying to reconcile the man sobbing over her grave with the man who'd ordered her into it. Dante's lips moved. She was too far to hear, but she'd spent 5 years learning to read his mouth. 3 words, repeated like a prayer. I'm so sorry. Beneath her veil, Seo Yun's hands clenched into fists. Sorry didn't raise the dead. And it certainly didn't explain why he'd wanted her to become one. The apartment Seo Yun had rented was everything their penthouse hadn't been: small, anonymous, forgettable. Peeling wallpaper. A window that overlooked a dumpling shop's ventilation system. The kind of place where neighbors minded their business and landlords accepted cash. She locked the door behind her, then checked it twice. Old habits. The funeral clothes came off methodically. Black dress folded over the chair. Veil tucked into a drawer she'd never open again. In the bathroom mirror, she studied the stranger she'd become. Short black hair, she'd cut it herself 3 weeks ago with kitchen scissors, destroying the long waves Dante used to wind around his fingers. Colored contacts turning her brown eyes a forgettable hazel. 20 pounds lighter from stress and convenience store meals. Her husband wouldn't recognize her if they passed on the street. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it sat heavy in her chest alongside the image of him breaking in the rain. She stripped off the high-necked underlayer, exposing the scar. In the harsh bathroom light, it looked worse than it felt, a puckered asterisk of tissue just below her collarbone. The exit wound on her back was worse, but she'd learned not to look at that one. Seo Yun touched it gently, tracing the raised edges. Some doctor had probably pulled the bullet from the empty casket Dante had buried today. Catalogued it as evidence that she was dead. She wondered if he'd kept it. A trophy or a penance. With Dante, it could be either. Her phone buzzed. A burner she replaced every 2 weeks, with exactly 1 contact saved. Unknown, did you go? Her sister. The only person who knew Seo Yun was alive. Seo Yun, yes. Unknown, and? Seo Yun's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How did you summarize watching your husband grieve the murder he'd commissioned? How did you explain that his tears had felt more real than any words he'd spoken in the months before he'd tried to kill her? Seo Yun, he cried. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Unknown, good. Let him suffer. Unknown, when are you leaving Seoul? That was the plan. Collect the last of her emergency cash, get on a train to Busan, disappear into coastal anonymity. Her sister had a friend with a restaurant, always hiring, no questions asked. A fresh start. Seo Yun looked at her reflection. At the ghost she'd become. Seo Yun, soon. She deleted the conversation and powered off the phone. Sleep didn't come. She lay in the dark, listening to the dumpling shop's exhaust fan rattle, and remembered. 4 years ago. Their first anniversary. Dante had cleared his schedule, a miracle, given that clearing his schedule usually required acts of God or violence. He'd driven them to a beach house she hadn't known he owned, 3 hours from the city. No phones, he'd said, tossing both their cells into a drawer. No work. Just us. They'd spent 2 days pretending to be normal. Cooked meals that burned because neither of them really knew how. Walked the beach at sunset. Made love on every available surface like newlyweds instead of people married into organized crime. On the second night, lying tangled in sheets with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, she'd asked the question that had been building. Do you ever wish you'd chosen something else? His hand had stilled in her hair. Else how? Different life. Different work. She'd traced the tattoo on his ribs, a dragon that symbolized his family's legacy, inked when he was 16 and already being groomed for leadership. Something that doesn't require men with guns outside our bedroom. Every day, he'd admitted quietly. She'd lifted her head to look at him. Really? Every single day, I wish I could give you normal. A husband who comes home at 6. Dinner parties with boring people. Kids who don't need bodyguards. His thumb had brushed her cheekbone. But I can't. This is what I am. I know what you are. Do you? Something had flickered in his eyes. Sometimes I think you see who I could have been. Not who I actually am. I see both, she'd said. I chose both. He'd kissed her then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to prove something or apologize for something. She'd never figured out which. That version of Dante felt like fiction now. A story she'd told herself about a man who'd never existed. Seo-yun rolled onto her side, staring at the wall. The grief she'd witnessed today was real. She knew him too well to mistake performance for genuine suffering. But real didn't mean redemptive. He could grieve what he destroyed and still be the person who destroyed it. The question that haunted her wasn't whether he'd loved her. It was why love hadn't been enough to stop him. Across the city, in a penthouse that still smelled faintly of her perfume, Dante stood in their bedroom with a gun in his hand. Not to use. Just to hold. To remind himself what he was. Min-jun had driven him home, helped him inside like an invalid, tried to offer comfort in the language of men who didn't know how to speak grief. You did what was necessary, Hyung-nim. Necessary. The word tasted like poison. Dante set the gun on the nightstand, her side, where she used to keep a book and a glass of water. The book was still there. The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. She'd been halfway through. He picked it up, thumb finding the page she'd marked. Wondered if she'd known, those last weeks, what was coming. If she'd felt the target painting itself across her back. His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally, he answered. What? We have a problem. Min-jun's voice was tight with something Dante couldn't identify. The Kozlovs. They're asking about the funeral. Let them ask. They want proof she's dead. Dante's hand tightened around the phone. They saw the obituary. The funeral was public. They want to see the body. Silence stretched like a wound. That's not happening, Dante said flatly. They're insisting. Said they'll consider her death confirmed when they verified it personally. Min-jun paused. Alexei Kozlov himself is coming to Seoul. Tomorrow. The phone cracked in Dante's grip. 3 months ago, he'd ordered Seo-yun's death because the Kozlovs had made it clear, his wife for a truce, or war that would paint the streets red. They'd given him a week to decide. He'd decided she'd be safer dead by his hand than alive in theirs. Now they wanted proof. And Dante had buried an empty casket. The body in the casket belonged to a Jane Doe, unclaimed, approximate age and build, retrieved from the morgue through channels that didn't ask questions. Min-jun had handled the arrangements with the efficiency that made him invaluable and the moral flexibility that made him dangerous. Dante had never looked at the corpse. Couldn't bear to see even a stranger wearing his wife's death. Now the Kozlovs wanted to exhume her. When does Alexei arrive? Dante asked, his voice eerily calm. 1800 hours. He's bringing his Brava council, 6 men, all armed. Min-jun hesitated. He said to consider it a diplomatic visit. Diplomatic. As if anything involving Alexei Kozlov could be called diplomacy. The man collected grievances like trophies and settled debts in blood. 3 months ago, he'd sent Dante a photograph, Seo-yun leaving a cafe, unaware of the rifle scope framing her head. Beautiful wife, the accompanying note had read. I'd hate for something to happen to her. Let's discuss terms. The terms had been simple: Seo Yun's life in exchange for territorial concessions that would cripple Dante's operations for years. A slow death for his empire, or a fast one for his wife. He'd chosen the third option. Tell Alexei the body was cremated, Dante said. Cultural tradition. He'll understand. Hyungnim, Minjun's tone carried warning. We announced a burial. There were witnesses. If we change the story now, then make it consistent. Say we buried the urn. Dante moved to the window, looked out over Seoul's glittering sprawl. Somewhere in that maze of light, the Kozlovs were planning their next move. He doesn't need to see her to believe she's dead. He just needs to believe I'm broken enough to have done it. That, at least, wouldn't require acting. And if he pushes back, then we give him what he came for. Dante's reflection stared back at him from the glass, hollow-eyed, haunted. Exactly what Alexei would expect from a man who'd killed his own wife. War. Seo Yun woke to pounding on her door. She was on her feet instantly, pulse spiking, hand reaching for the knife she kept under the pillow. The burner phone read 5:47 a.m. Too early for the landlord. Too deliberate for a mistake. Seo Yun. Her sister's voice, urgent and low. Mun Yeo Leo. Open up. She crossed the room in 3 strides, checked the peephole, then unlocked the deadbolt. Ji-hai pushed inside, still in her nurse's scrubs from the night shift, face tight with fear. You need to leave. Now. What happened? The Kozlovs are in Seoul. Ji-hai moved to the window, checked the street below with practiced paranoia. I have a patient, Russian, low-level Bratva, came in with a stab wound. He was talking to his friend in the waiting room. They're here to verify your death. Seo Yun's blood went cold. They saw the funeral. What more do they need? Apparently Alexei Kozlov doesn't take anyone's word. He wants proof. Ji-hai turned from the window. If they start investigating, if they talk to the morgue, the medical examiner, they'll find out the body wasn't mine. The implications cascaded like falling dominoes. The Kozlovs would know Dante had lied. Would know she was alive. And if they'd wanted her dead enough to force Dante's hand 3 months ago, they'd want her dead even more now. Why? Seo Yun heard herself ask. Why do they care if I'm alive or dead? I don't know. But whatever the reason, you can't be here when they start looking. Ji-hai pulled an envelope from her bag. Train ticket to Busan, leaves at 7. Cash. New ID, the best I could get on short notice. Seo Yun took the envelope with numb fingers. Inside, a driver's license with her face and a stranger's name, Park Min-ji. A fiction to replace the fiction of her death. Come with me, she said. I can't. If I disappear too, it raises questions. Ji-hai gripped her shoulders. You have 20 minutes to pack. Don't take anything sentimental. Don't look back. Just run. It was the smart play. The only play. So why did leaving feel like dying all over again? She packed in 15 minutes. 2 changes of clothes. Toiletries. The cash and new ID. Everything else, the few possessions she'd accumulated in 3 months of half-living, stayed behind like shed skin. At the door, she paused. Looked back at the apartment that had been her grave and her resurrection. Then she stepped into the hallway and locked it behind her. The subway station was a 10-minute walk. She kept her head down, blending into the early morning crowd of workers and students. Nobody looked twice at the thin woman in the black jacket and surgical mask. Half of Seoul wore masks anyway. She was 3 blocks from the station when she saw them. 2 men in dark suits, standing on the corner. Faces she didn't recognize, but body language she knew intimately. The way they scanned the crowd. The bulge of concealed weapons. The military precision in how they'd positioned themselves to watch intersecting streets. Kozlov's men. Seo-yun kept walking, forced her pace to stay steady even as her heart hammered. Turned right instead of continuing straight. Took a random turn into an alley that would loop back toward. She nearly walked into the 3rd man. He was massive, easily 6'5", with prison tattoos crawling up his neck. Russian Orthodox crosses and Cyrillic script. His eyes widened in recognition that made no sense. He couldn't know her, she'd never seen him before. Then she understood. He wasn't recognizing her face. He was recognizing something else. The way she moved. The shape of her beneath the disguise. Something that matched a photograph they'd been given, a target they'd been assigned. "Gospoza Choi," he said, and smiled. "Mrs. Choi." Seo-yun ran. Behind her, she heard him speaking rapid Russian into a phone. Heard his footsteps, heavy and inevitable. The alley stretched ahead like a tunnel with no end. She burst onto a main street, darted between cars, ignored the honking horns. The train station was still 4 blocks away. She'd never make it. A black sedan pulled alongside her. The passenger door swung open. "Get in," Min-jun said from the driver's seat. Seo-yun had 3 seconds to decide, trust the man who'd served Dante without question, or take her chances with the Russian closing in behind her. She got in. Min-jun accelerated before her door fully closed, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic with the precision of someone who'd fled worse situations. In the rearview mirror, the Russian stood on the sidewalk, phone pressed to his ear, watching them disappear. "Seatbelt," Min-jun said calmly, like they were taking a Sunday drive. She complied, hands shaking with adrenaline. "How did you?" "I've been following you for 2 weeks." The admission landed like a slap. Seo-yun twisted in her seat to face him, searching for weapons, escape routes, anything. "Does he know that you're alive?" Min-jun's eyes stayed on the road. "No." "Then why?" "Because I pulled the trigger." Silence filled the car like smoke. Seo-yun's hand drifted unconsciously to her shoulder, to the scar hidden beneath her jacket. Young-ho hesitated, Min-jun continued. "He was supposed to make it clean, quick. Instead, he let you run. So I took over the job myself." He changed lanes, perfectly composed. "I'm the one who shot you in that parking garage." The confession sat between them, grotesque in its honesty. "You missed," Seo-yun said, voice hollow. "No. I didn't." She stared at him. At his profile, sharp jaw, focused eyes, the face of a man who'd stood beside Dante at their wedding, who'd toasted their happiness and meant it. "You let me live. I adjusted for the Kevlar vest I knew you'd be wearing. Hit the only exposed area that wouldn't kill you. Shoulder, above the heart, below the major arteries." His hands flexed on the steering wheel. "Then I reported mission complete and buried a stranger in your place." "Why?" "Because he loved you." Min-jun's voice cracked on the past tense. "And I loved him enough to save him from himself." The pieces were assembling into a picture Seo-yun didn't want to see. "He doesn't know you faked it. He can't know. Ever." Min-jun took a sharp turn into a parking structure. "Dante ordered your death because the Kozlovs gave him an ultimatum, surrender you for purposes they didn't specify, or they'd start a war that would burn both our organizations to ash. He chose a third option, make them think you were dead so they'd back off. So he had me killed to protect me." The logic was so twisted it almost made sense. And you decided to improve on his plan. His plan was insane. Grief-driven. He wasn't thinking clearly. Min-jun pulled into a space on the 3rd level, killed the engine. I gave him what he needed, believable proof of your death, without actually making him a widower. How considerate. It was the only way to keep you both alive. He finally looked at her, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his face. The Kozlovs wanted you specifically, Buyuin. Not random leverage. Not a generic target. You. Alexei Kozlov mentioned you by name, sent photographs, detailed surveillance. Whatever his reason, you became an obsession. Seo-yun's mind raced. I've never met him. Never even been to Russia. Why would he? I don't know. But now he's in Seoul demanding to verify your corpse. Min-jun pulled out his phone, showed her a security photo, a silver-haired man in an expensive coat, surrounded by armed men, entering a hotel. That's Alexei. He arrives at Dante's office in 4 hours expecting proof you're dead. Then give it to him. You buried a body. Which we claimed was cremated as of this morning. Cultural necessity, Dante's trying to avoid exhumation. He pocketed the phone. But Alexei's smart. Paranoid. If he smells deception, he'll dig until he finds the truth. And when he discovers you're alive, he'll come for me himself. Worse. He'll realize Dante played him. The truce will shatter. And this time, the Kozlovs won't negotiate. Seo-yun leaned back against the seat, processing. 3 months ago, her husband had sentenced her to death rather than let her fall into Alexei Kozlov's hands. Now she was being hunted by the same man while Dante grieved a murder that never happened. The irony would be funny if it wasn't trying to kill her. What do you want from me? She asked. Get out of Seoul. Today. I'll handle the Kozlovs, convince them the cremation was legitimate. Min-jun met her eyes. But you can never come back. Never contact Dante. As far as the world knows, Seo-yun Choi died 3 months ago. And if I refuse? Then we both die. You from Kozlov's men, me from Dante when he learns I betrayed him. His smile was bitter. Choose quickly. Your train leaves in 40 minutes. The old Seo-yun, the one who'd fallen in love with a dangerous man and thought love was armor, would have run. Would have taken the escape offered and never looked back. But that woman had died in a parking garage. The one who'd survived was tired of running. I need to know why, Seo-yun said. Why Alexei wants me. Why Dante thought death was my only protection. Why any of this happened. Buyuin. Stop calling me that. I'm not his wife anymore. She pulled the envelope from her pocket, the train ticket, the fake ID, the cash. Held it out to Min-jun. I'm not running until I understand what I'm running from. Min-jun didn't take the envelope. You'll get yourself killed. Someone already tried. I'm still here. For a long moment, he studied her. Seeing, perhaps, what Dante had seen years ago, the steel beneath the softness, the refusal to be protected from her own choices. Finally, he sighed. There's a file. In Dante's safe. Everything he learned about why the Kozlovs targeted you. Get it for me. That's treason. You already committed treason when you let me live. Seo-yun's voice hardened. Now finish what you started. Min-jun's safe house was nothing like Dante's properties. No marble floors or floor-to-ceiling windows. No view of Seoul's skyline. Just a concrete box in Gangnam's industrial district, sandwiched between a textile factory and an auto shop. The kind of place that existed in official records but never drew attention. Wait here, Minjun said, unlocking 3 separate deadbolts. Don't answer the door. Don't turn on lights facing the street. Don't. I know how to hide. Seoyun stepped inside. The space was sparse: Murphy bed, kitchenette, table with 2 chairs. A go bag sat by the door, perpetually packed. How long? 2 hours. Maybe 3. He checked his watch. Dante's meeting Alexei at noon. I'll need to be there, play my part. The safe is in his home office, I can access it after. He'll notice you going through his things. He's barely home anymore. Spends most nights at headquarters, drinking himself numb. Minjun's expression flickered with something like grief. You'd be horrified how he's been living. Good, Seoyun thought viciously. Then immediately hated herself for thinking it. The file, she redirected. What's in it? I don't know. Dante kept the Kozlov research locked down, eyes only. But whatever's in there made him desperate enough to order your execution. Minjun moved toward the door. I'll get it. You stay alive until I do. He left, locks clicking into place behind him. Seoyun stood in the silence, surrounded by the evidence of Minjun's double life. A man loyal enough to follow murder orders, treasonous enough to sabotage them. She didn't know whether to trust him or fear him. Maybe both. She explored the safe house with methodical efficiency. The Murphy bed revealed a false bottom, passports, currency in 5 denominations, ammunition. The kitchenette held canned goods with Cyrillic labels. The bathroom cabinet, first aid supplies, hair dye, colored contacts. Tools for disappearing. Minjun had been preparing his own escape. In the table's drawer, she found a burner phone and a photograph. The photo was old, edges worn from handling. It showed 3 young men in their early 20s, arms slung around each other's shoulders, drunk happy outside a bar. She recognized Dante immediately, younger, softer, before power had carved him into something sharp. Minjun stood beside him, grinning. The third man she didn't know. She flipped it over. Faded ink, Dante, Minjun, Jae-sung. Last night before everything changed. Seoyun stared at her husband's photographed face. He looked so unburdened. So completely unaware of what he'd become. Her phone buzzed. Ji-hi. Unknown, are you on the train? Seoyun, change of plans. Unknown, what plans? Get out of Seoul. Seoyun, I need answers first. Unknown, you need to survive first. Answers won't matter if you're dead. Her sister wasn't wrong. But survival felt less important than understanding. Than knowing whether the man grieving at her funeral had loved her or simply loved the idea of her. Seoyun, trust me. Unknown, I trusted you to run. Now I'm terrified. Seoyun, I'll be careful. She powered off the phone before Ji-hi could argue further. Across the city, Dante stood in his office, preparing to meet the man who'd orchestrated his wife's death. He'd chosen his clothes carefully. Black suit, no tie, formal enough to show respect, casual enough to suggest grief. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. Good. The exhaustion would sell the performance. They're here, Minjun announced from the doorway. Hyung-nim, you don't have to do this alone. I can handle Alexei. No. Dante straightened his cuffs. This is my mess. My consequence. You did what you had to. I killed my wife to prevent a war. Dante's laugh was hollow. And now I'm entertaining her murderer in my office. Tell me how that's necessity instead of cowardice. Minjun had no answer. The Kozlov delegation entered like an invasion. 6 men, all armed, all radiating the casual violence of professional killers. And at their center, Alexei Kozlov. He was older than his photograph suggested, late 50s, silver hair swept back, expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the prison-forged brutality beneath. His eyes were the palest blues Seo-yun had ever described, back when she'd noticed such things. Predator eyes, she'd called them, seeing Alexei once from a distance at a neutral meeting. Like he's always deciding whether you're useful or food. Dante had laughed then, pulled her close, promised nothing would ever hurt her. That promise sat between them now like a corpse. Dante. Alexei's accent was thick, deliberate. He moved forward, arms spread in greeting. My condolences. I understand you've suffered a terrible loss. Thank you for coming. Dante accepted the embrace, brief and perfunctory. Every instinct screamed to put a bullet in this man's skull. Instead, he played the widower. Though I'm surprised you traveled so far for a funeral. Your wife was a remarkable woman. Alexei settled into the offered chair, waved his men into position around the room. Beautiful. Intelligent. It's tragic what happened to her. Tragic, Dante echoed. The word felt like glass in his mouth. The official report said car accident. Very sudden. Alexei's smile didn't reach his eyes. But we both know that's not true, don't we? The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I don't know what you mean, Dante said carefully. Come now. We're both professionals. Alexei leaned forward. You had her killed. Probably made it look accidental to avoid family complications. Smart. Efficient. I respect that. Dante's hands curled into fists beneath the desk. You forced my hand. I gave you options. You chose this one. Alexei shrugged. But now I need proof. Call it due diligence. My people are very interested in confirming Seo-yun Choi is actually dead. Why? The question escaped before Dante could stop it. Why does it matter? Why did you target her at all? Alexei's smile widened. Because, moi drug, he said softly, your wife is my daughter. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Dante's world tilted. Reformed. Shattered again. That's impossible, he said, but his voice came from somewhere distant. Seo-yun's father died when she was 12. Heart attack. I saw the death certificate. Ah, yes. Jong Min-ho. Good man. Raised my daughter well after her mother left me. Alexei settled deeper into the chair, utterly relaxed. But he wasn't her biological father. I am. Min-jun had gone statue still by the door. Dante felt his own pulse hammering against his skull, trying to process information that rewrote everything. You're lying. Am I? Alexei pulled a photograph from his jacket. Slid it across the desk. Dante didn't want to look. Looked anyway. The photo showed a young woman, early 20s, beautiful, with Seo-yun's exact eyes and smile. She stood beside a younger Alexei, visibly pregnant, wearing a wedding ring. Her name was Sunmi. We met in Vladivostok in 1996. I was expanding operations, she was studying abroad. We married. She got pregnant. Alexei's voice carried an emotion Dante couldn't identify. Then she discovered what I really did for living. Took our daughter and ran back to Seoul. I spent years looking. By the time I found them, Sunmi had married Jong Min-ho, given Seo-yun his name, built a life I couldn't touch without exposing myself. So you left her alone. I watched. From a distance. Made sure she was safe, educated, cared for. Alexei's eyes hardened. And then she married a Korean gangster. My daughter, tied to the son of the family that's been encroaching on my territory for a decade. The pieces assembled with sickening clarity. This was never about territory. About business. Oh, it was always about business. But it became personal when you put a ring on my daughter's finger. Alexei leaned forward. I wanted her back. Wanted to tell her the truth. Wanted her to know she has a real family, a real legacy. Not this, he gestured around the office. This pretend empire built on a peninsula. She would never have gone with you. Perhaps not willingly. At first. Alexei smiled. But daughters eventually understand their fathers. Given time. Given proper context. Dante felt bile rising in his throat. You were going to kidnap her. Reprogram her. I was going to save her from you. Alexei's mask slipped, showing the monster beneath. From a marriage built on lies, to a man who'd eventually get her killed. I've seen how your type operates, Dante. You love them until loving them becomes inconvenient. Then you bury them. The accusation landed with the weight of prophecy. So when I refused your terms, when I wouldn't hand her over, I forced your hand. Made you choose. Alexei sat back, satisfied. Kill her quickly yourself, or let me take her slowly. Either way, I got what I wanted. What you wanted, Dante repeated slowly, was your daughter dead? I wanted you to prove you were exactly what I knew you were, a man who'd murder his wife to maintain power. Alexei's voice dripped venom. I wanted Sioyun to have no husband to mourn, no marriage to remember fondly. I wanted you destroyed, so when I finally told her the truth about her parentage, she'd have nothing left to cling to. Except Dante had destroyed himself. Had ordered Sioyun's death believing it was mercy, protection, the only way to keep Alexei's hands off her. And all along, Alexei had wanted him to do exactly that. You're insane, Dante said. I'm a father. Alexei stood. Now. The proof. I want to see my daughter's body. Minjun moved fractionally closer. Dante felt the weight of the gun in his desk drawer, loaded, ready, requiring only the smallest choice. He could kill Alexei right now. Start a war that would consume both organizations, leave Seoul painted in blood, but remove this man from existence. Or he could maintain the lie. Convince Alexei that Sioyun was truly dead, that his elaborate revenge had succeeded. The body was cremated, Dante said. This morning. Cultural tradition, her mother insisted. Alexei's expression went flat. You're lying. The urn is in my home. I can have it brought here. Urns prove nothing. Could be filled with anyone's ashes. Anything's ashes. Alexei's hand drifted toward his jacket. Around the room, his men tensed. I want forensic proof. DNA. Dental records. Something concrete. That's not possible. Make it possible. Alexei's voice dropped to something lethal. Or I'll assume you're hiding something. And if you're hiding something, that means she's alive. And if she's alive. The office door burst open. One of Alexei's men stumbled in, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. Alexei's head snapped toward him. They exchanged words too fast for Dante to follow, but he caught two, Zavaya and Soul. Alive. Soul. Alexei turned back to Dante, and his smile was terrible. Funny thing, he said. My men just spotted a woman matching Sioyun's description. 3 hours ago, in Gangnam. He pulled out his phone, showed Dante a photograph. Grainy, taken from a distance. But unmistakably her, short hair, different clothes, haunted eyes. Alive. Now, Alexei said softly. Let's discuss what happens when a man lies to me about killing my daughter. Minjun's hand moved toward his gun. Dante's world collapsed into a single point of clarity. Seo Yun was alive, and Alexei knew. The gunshot shattered the moment before anyone could draw. Not from inside the office, from the street below. Then another. Automatic weapons fire, close and getting closer. Alexei's men rushed to the window while Dante's mind raced through possibilities. Rival gang, police raid, coordinated attack. Chertvosmy, one of the Russians spat, peering down. It's the Tanakagumi. The Japanese Yakuza. Dante's oldest rivals, supposedly dormant since the last treaty. Their timing couldn't be coincidence. Alexei's expression shifted from predatory satisfaction to cold calculation. How many? 2 vehicles. Maybe 15 men. The Russian turned from the window. They're hitting the lobby. More gunfire, closer now. The building's security system began shrieking. Dante's phone lit up with alerts: perimeter breach, casualties, intruders advancing to the 3rd floor. Minjun moved to Dante's side. The panic room. Now. But Alexei was already backing toward the door, his men forming a protective wall around him. This conversation isn't finished, Dante. When we're done bleeding your Japanese friends, you and I will discuss your living wife. He disappeared into the corridor with his security, leaving Dante and Minjun in the eye of approaching chaos. Did you know about this? Dante demanded. The Tanakagumi? No. But right now, it doesn't matter. Minjun grabbed Dante's arm. We have maybe 3 minutes before they reach this floor. The safe house. Seo Yun. The name left Dante's mouth before thought caught up. If the Tanakagumi are moving now, if they somehow know Alexei's here, if this is coordinated, then they might know about her too. Minjun's face went pale. Fuck. Fuck. They ran. Seo Yun heard the explosion before she understood what it was. The safe house windows rattled. Car alarms shrieked to life outside. She moved to the window carefully, peered through the gap in the curtains. Black smoke billowed from a building 6 blocks away, Dante's headquarters, she realized with cold certainty. She'd been there enough times to recognize the architecture, the location. Her phone buzzed. Minjun, from a number she didn't recognize. Unknown, don't move. Don't leave. Under attack. Dante knows you're alive. Her heart stopped. Seo Yun, what happened? Unknown, Alexei knows too. Saw surveillance photo. Then Tanakagumi hit us. Everything's compromised. Unknown, I can't get to you. Stay hidden. We'll contact when clear. The messages stopped. Seo Yun stared at her phone, mind racing. Dante knew she was alive. Alexei knew she was alive. And now a 3rd player had entered the game violently enough to bomb a building. She should run. Grab the go bag, disappear into soul sprawl, become someone else entirely. Instead, she pulled out Minjun's burner from the drawer and started searching his contacts. Most were coded, single letters, numbers, nothing identifying. But one was labeled simply, emergency backup. She dialed. It rang twice before a woman answered in Japanese. Minjun? What's happening? I'm seeing reports. This isn't Minjun, Seo Yun said in her rusty Japanese, learned during a semester abroad. Who is this? Silence. Then, who the hell are you? Someone who needs answers. The Tanakagumi just attacked. Why? The woman laughed, sharp and bitter. Because your husband started a war 3 months ago when he killed you. Or did he think the Tanaka family wouldn't notice when our Korean allies suddenly went silent? I don't understand. Your mother, girl. Jong Sun-mi. Did you ever wonder why she spoke perfect Japanese? Why she had family in Osaka she never let you visit? Seo-yun's world tilted again. Twice in one day, her parentage rewritten. Sun-mi was Tanaka Sumiko before she married that Russian bastard. The woman's voice carried decades of resentment. My sister. Which makes you my niece. And when we heard you'd been killed, supposedly by accident, but we're not stupid, we decided it was time to remind Dante Choi what happens when you touch Tanaka blood. Wait. Stop. Seo-yun's hands were shaking. My mother was Yakuza. Princess Yakuza. Oyabun's daughter. She ran away to Russia, got pregnant by a mobster, came crawling back to Seoul to hide. A pause. We've been watching you your whole life. Protecting you from a distance. And when Dante murdered you. He didn't. I'm alive. The silence stretched so long Seo-yun thought the connection had dropped. Say that again, the woman said finally. I'm alive. The assassination failed. I've been hiding. But we saw the funeral. The obituary. Dante's public grief, the woman's voice sharpened. Where are you right now? Every instinct screamed not to answer. But Seo-yun was tired of being a chess piece in games she didn't understand. Gangnam. Safe house. And I need extraction before either the Russians or the Koreans find me. Text me the address. We'll send a car. Why should I trust you? Because, niece, you're the last living piece of my sister. And I've already started a war to avenge you. The woman's voice softened fractionally. Let me finish it by getting you somewhere safe. Seo-yun looked around the safe house, Min-jun's escape plan, Dante's unwitting protection, a hiding place that had just become a trap. She typed the address and hit send. Then she grabbed the go bag, loaded the gun she found inside, and waited to see which family would reach her first. The car arrived in 12 minutes, a black Mercedes with tinted windows and 2 women in the front seat. Both wore business suits. Both moved like soldiers. Seo-yun watched from the window as they scanned the street with professional efficiency. The driver's hand rested casually near her waistband, armed, ready. The passenger pulled out a phone, sent a message. Seo-yun's burner buzzed. Unknown, black Mercedes. 2 women. That's us. You have 30 seconds before Kozlov's men finish their sweep of this district. She didn't hesitate. Grabbed the go bag, took one last look at Min-jun's safe house, and left. The passenger door opened as she approached. She slid into the back seat, and they were moving before she'd fully closed the door. Seatbelt, the driver said in Japanese. She was older, 50s maybe, with silver streaking through her short hair. I'm Tanaka Yuki. This is my daughter, Hana. Hana twisted in the passenger seat to look at Seo-yun. She was young, late 20s, with her mother's sharp features and eyes that assessed threats automatically. You look like Sumiko. It's unsettling. I look like my mother? Seo-yun had spent years being told she resembled the Jongs, her adoptive father's family. Never the woman who'd left her. Exactly like her. Before Russia ruined her. Yuki took a turn fast enough to throw Seo-yun against the door. Sorry. We're being followed. Seo-yun looked back. A dark SUV, 3 cars behind, matching their movements. Kozlov's, she asked. Probably. Could be your husband's men. Hard to tell, everyone's hunting everyone right now. Yuki accelerated onto the highway. We're taking you to the port. Boat to Osaka leaves in 2 hours. From there, you'll meet my father. The Oyabun. Your grandfather, Hana corrected. He'll want to see you. Confirm you're real. Decide what to do about the mess your existence has caused. The mess I caused? Seo-yun's laugh was sharp. I didn't ask to be kidnapped, murdered, or claimed by 3 different crime families. No. You just married into one without researching your own bloodline. Hana's tone carried no sympathy. Sumiko kept secrets. Dangerous ones. Those secrets just detonated. The SUV behind them accelerated. Yuki cursed in Japanese, swerved across 2 lanes. The SUV matched her, closing distance. They're going to force us off the road, Hana said calmly. She opened the glove compartment, pulled out 2 handguns. Offered one to Seo-yun. I don't, Seo-yun started. You spent 5 years married to Dante Choi. Don't pretend you don't know how to shoot. Hana's eyes were hard. Besides, that's Kozlov's vehicle. If they take you alive, what do you think your father does to daughters who run? The word father tasted wrong applied to Alexei. But Hana was right about the gun. Dante had insisted she learn, taken her to private ranges, taught her stance and breathing and the weight of taking a life. Just in case, he'd said. I won't always be there to protect you. The irony burned. She took the gun. Checked the magazine automatically, chambered around. The SUV slammed into their rear bumper. Yuki fought the wheel, kept them steady. Hana discouraged them. Hana rolled down her window, leaned out with practiced ease, and fired 3 shots at the SUV's tires. Missed, the vehicle swerved. Fired again. The front tire exploded. The SUV spun, clipped a barrier, and flipped. Shit, Hana breathed. That was not the plan. But Yuki was already taking an exit ramp, putting distance between them and the wreckage. They'll send more. Alexei doesn't give up. Neither does Dante, Seo-yun said quietly. Both women glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You still love him, Yuki said. Not a question. I don't know what I feel. Seo-yun stared at the gun in her hands. He tried to kill me. He's mourning me. He built my death to protect me. None of it makes sense. Love in our world never does. Yuki's voice carried bitter experience. Sumiko loved Alexei once. Then she saw what he really was. She loved Minho too, your adoptive father. That was real. Quieter. Safe. She never told me any of this. She was protecting you. From her past. From the families that would claim you. Yuki met Seo-yun's eyes in the mirror. She died believing you'd escaped that life. That you'd married for love, not obligation. I did marry for love. And look where that got you. The port appeared ahead, massive cranes, stacked containers, ships lined up like sleeping giants. Yuki drove past the main entrance, took a service road to a private dock. A yacht waited. Small, fast, expensive. 3 men stood guard on the deck, Yakuza, clearly, from their bearing and tattoos. Last chance, Hana said as they parked. Once you're on that boat, you're Tanaka. Not Choi. Not Kozlov. The families will go to war over which one you belong to. I don't belong to anyone, Seo-yun said. Good answer. Yuki killed the engine. But you'll need to convince my father of that. He's already planning your future. They got out. Started toward the yacht. A voice stopped them cold. Seo-yun. She turned. Dante stood 30 feet away, alone, looking like he'd been through a war. Blood on his suit. Bruises darkening his jaw. Gun hanging loose in his right hand. "Get away from my wife," he said to the Tanakas. Yuki and Hana raised their weapons. Dante didn't even look at them. His eyes, red-rimmed, devastated, furious, locked onto Seo-yun's. "You're alive," he breathed. "You're alive." Time suspended. The port's industrial noise faded, cranes, trucks, distant ships, leaving only the sound of breathing. 5 people. 3 guns. A chasm of betrayal and blood. "Lower your weapon," Yuki said, her gun trained on Dante's chest. "Or I'll finish what my family started at your headquarters." Dante didn't move. Didn't blink. His entire existence had narrowed to the woman standing between him and the Tanakas. "Seo-yun," he said again, and her name broke in his mouth. "Tell me I'm not insane. Tell me you're real." She couldn't speak. 3 months of rage, grief, survival, all of it crashed together watching him stand there destroyed and dangerous, the man who'd loved her and sentenced her and mourned her all at once. "She's real," Hana said. "No thanks to you. Now back away before." "I'm not talking to you." Dante's voice went cold, the tones Seo-yun recognized from business calls, from moments before violence. "Seo-yun. Please." The please shattered something. "Put the gun down," Seo-yun said quietly. Everyone looked at her. "Not you," she clarified to the Tanakas. Then, to Dante, "You don't get to hold a weapon while talking to me. Not after what you did." "What I did was try to save you." "By killing me? By making them think you were dead." The words exploded out of him. "Alexei gave me a choice, surrender you to him or watch him start a war that would kill thousands. He wanted you, specifically. Obsessively. I couldn't let him have you. So you had me shot instead." Dante flinched like she'd struck him. "I ordered it quick. Clean. I thought," his voice cracked. "I thought death by my hand was mercy compared to what he'd do to you." Her father, Yuki interjected. "You tried to kill Alexei Kozlov's daughter." Dante's head snapped toward her. "What?" Surprise. Hannah's smile was vicious. "Your wife's biological father is the Russian mobster who wanted her back. And her mother was Yakuza royalty. You married into a bloodline that's been fighting itself for 30 years. Seo-yun watched the information hit him. Watched him recalculate everything he thought he knew. His gun hand trembled. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Seo-yun, I swear I didn't." "Does it matter?" Her voice was hollow. "You still signed the order. Still sent Young-ho to that parking garage. Still buried a stranger and cried over an empty casket. The casket wasn't empty." Dante's eyes were wild. "You were in it. Your memory. Our marriage. Everything I destroyed because I thought I was protecting you. And I was bleeding out on concrete thinking the man I loved wanted me dead." The words hung between them like a bridge on fire, still standing, but impassable. Dante's gun clattered to the ground. He took a step forward. Yuki's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't," Seo-yun said to her aunt. "He tried to murder you. I know what he did." She moved between them, putting her body in the line of fire. Facing Dante. "I've spent 3 months knowing exactly what he did. Up close, he looked worse. Exhausted. Broken. The invincible Dante Choi reduced to a man barely holding himself together. "I searched for loopholes," he said quietly. "Ways to fake your death convincingly enough to satisfy Alexei. Witness protection. Plastic surgery. Disappearing you so completely even I wouldn't know where you'd gone. But he had your blood. DNA samples from our home that I didn't know existed. He said he'd verify any corpse I produced. Dante's hands flexed uselessly. So I made it real. Gave the order. Then drank myself unconscious so I wouldn't have to think about what I'd done. And Minjun? Dante's expression flickered, confusion, then understanding, then something like betrayal. Minjun knew you were alive? He's the one who shot me. Deliberately missed everything vital. Faked the evidence. Seo Yun watched the revelation destroy him further. He loved you enough to save you from yourself. Where is he now? I don't know. Last message said he couldn't reach me. That everything was compromised. Yuki's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression darkening. Kozlov's men are sweeping the port. We have maybe 10 minutes before they find us. Then we leave, Hannah said. Niece, on the boat. Now. But Seo Yun didn't move. She looked at Dante, at the man she'd loved, who'd broken her, who was standing here bleeding and desperate and completely unprepared for what she was about to say. I'm not going with them, she said. What? Yuki and Hannah spoke simultaneously. And I'm not going with you. She met Dante's eyes. I'm done being protected. Being controlled. Being killed or saved or claimed by men who think they own me. Seo Yun, Dante started. I survived your protection. I'll survive without it. Her voice was steel. You want forgiveness? Redemption? Then help me end this. Not by hiding me. By destroying everyone who thinks I'm a prize to be won. Dante stared at her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression, recognition, perhaps, of the woman he'd married. The one who'd chosen him despite the danger. Who'd refused to be sheltered. Alexei, he said. The Tanaka-gumi. Everyone. Everyone. He smiled, broken and terrible and absolutely genuine. Tell me how. Behind them, Yuki lowered her gun. You're both insane. Probably, Seo Yun agreed. But I'm tired of running. And she looked at Dante. Going to help me make sure I never have to again. In the distance, sirens wailed. Kozlov's men, or police, or more Yakuza. The world closing in with violence. Seo Yun held out her hand. After everything, the betrayal, the blood, the months of believing each other dead, Dante took it. Together, he asked. Until it's finished, she answered. And together, they turned to face the war they'd both created. The safe house in Jeju Island wasn't much, a fishing cottage perched on black volcanic rock, weathered by salt and wind. No marble floors. No armed guards at the gate. Just the ocean, relentless and indifferent, and two people learning how to exist in the same space without destroying each other. Seo Yun stood on the deck, watching the sun burn orange across the water. Her hair had grown out, dark roots showing through the dye. The scar on her shoulder ached in the cold, it always would, the surgeon had said. A permanent reminder. She heard him before she saw him. Dante moved differently now. Less predator, more human. The limp from the bullet he'd taken during the port standoff had mostly healed, but it slowed him down. Made him careful. Coffee, he said, setting a cup beside her on the railing. Thank you. They'd gotten better at this. Small courtesies. Coexistence. The language of people who'd gone to war together and survived, but hadn't yet figured out if they were still married or just allies. Minjun called, Dante said. The Kozlov territories are officially divided. Alexei's lieutenants are still fighting over the scraps, but none of them are looking for you anymore. Alexei Kozlov had died 3 weeks after the port confrontation. Not by Dante's hand, or Seo Yun's, or even the Tanakas. His own people had turned on him when they learned he'd started a 3-way war over a daughter he'd abandoned 30 years ago. The Bratva didn't tolerate sentiment. And the Tanakagumi? Seo Yun asked. Truce holding. Your grandfather accepted the terms. You're not Tanaka property, you're not an asset to be deployed. In exchange, we don't interfere with their operations in Osaka. Dante took a sip of his own coffee. Yuki sends her regards. Says you're welcome to visit. No obligations. Seo Yun almost smiled. Her aunt had turned out to be pragmatic beneath the violence, more interested in stability than revenge once Alexei was eliminated. They spoke occasionally. Carefully. Building something that might eventually resemble family. What about your organization? She asked. Dante's silence stretched long enough that she turned to look at him. He was staring at the ocean, jaw tight. I gave it to Minjun, made it official last week. The shock must have shown on her face. I'm done, he said quietly. With all of it. The empire, the violence, the calculations that turn people into chess pieces. He finally met her eyes. I spent 32 years becoming someone powerful enough to protect what I loved. Then I used that power to destroy it. You were trying to save me. I was trying to control an impossible situation. There's a difference. He set down his coffee. Minjun will be better. He sees people as people, not problems to solve. And you'll do what? Fish? The question came out sharper than intended. Maybe. Or nothing. I haven't decided yet. Dante's smile was small, sad. Turns out I don't know who I am without the crown. Seo Yun understood that. She'd spent 6 months trying to figure out who she was beyond wife, victim, prize. Some days she thought she was close to an answer. Most days, she had no idea. We could leave Jeju, she said. Go somewhere neither of us has history. Start completely over. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. The admission felt like failure. I know I don't want to keep living in aftermath. I know I'm tired of being afraid. Are you afraid of me? The question hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Seo Yun considered lying. Considered the easier answer. Instead, she gave him truth. Sometimes. When you move too fast. When I hear your voice from another room and for a second, I'm back in that parking garage. She watched him absorb it, saw the pain cross his face. But I'm also afraid of myself. Of how much I still, she stopped. Still what? Feel, she finished quietly. How much I still feel for you, despite everything. It's terrifying. Dante's hand moved toward hers on the railing. Stopped halfway. The gap between them had become familiar, close enough to touch, neither of them sure if they should. I'm seeing someone, he said abruptly. A therapist. In Jeju City. Twice a week. That surprised her more than his abdication. You are? Talking about the violence. The decisions. Trying to understand why I thought murder was love. His laugh was hollow. She says I have pathological control issues. Childhood trauma. Dissociative tendencies. Does it help? I don't know yet. But I'm trying. He looked at her. Because if there's any chance, any possibility that we could, I need to be better than who I was. Seo Yun's throat tightened. I'm seeing someone too. Different therapist. She specializes in trauma. Does she know? About us? Everything. Seo-yun turned back to the ocean. She says forgiveness isn't linear. That some days I might feel ready to move forward, and other days I'll want to burn everything down. That both are valid. And today? She considered the question. The sunset was fading to purple, stars beginning to pierce through. Somewhere in Seoul, Min-jun was running an empire with more conscience than Dante ever had. Somewhere in Osaka, Yuki was building bridges Seo-yun might one day cross. And here, on this isolated rock in the ocean, two broken people were trying to figure out if damage could ever be repaired or only managed. Today I don't want to burn anything, she said finally. Today I just want to exist without deciding. I can live with that. They stood in silence as darkness fell. The gap between their hands remained, not as wide as it had been, but still there. Still honest. Inside the cottage, 2 bedrooms waited. Separate spaces they'd negotiated in the beginning, when survival mattered more than reconciliation. Some nights, Dante would stand in her doorway, asking wordlessly if she needed company. Some nights, she'd say yes. Most nights, she'd say no. Tonight, she didn't know which it would be. Seo-yun, Dante said as they turned to go inside. I know I don't have the right to ask. But do you think, eventually, we could be something again? She looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man who'd terrorized her and treasured her, who'd broken her and was breaking himself trying to understand why. I think, she said carefully, that we're already something. I just don't know what yet. That's enough, he said. For now, that's enough. They walked inside. Left the door open to let in the sound of waves. And in the space between what they'd been and what they might become, they found something fragile and honest and wholly undefined. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. But it was real. And for tonight, that was enough.